It's the 30th of October 2013. Welcome to the official podcast of Hobby Electronics. I'm Nick. Joining me today on the podcast is Brendan. Brendan,
Hi.
are you there? There we go. He's a Doctor Who enthusiast and a fellow electronics person. I guess you could call him hobbyist, like myself. We've
Yep.
got a big lineup of stuff to talk about today, including Arduino, 3D printing, and my Mars rover as well, as you've seen put on the channel over the past few weeks and months, rather. So recently, the fourth video on the Raspberry Pi series went out on the channel. It took me a couple of months to put that together. Probably the most complicated project that I've ever actually had to build. Utilized Raspberry Pi, which I bought last year. Had a bit of a tinker around with that. Brendan's actually seen it along the way, the progress through the stages. And a couple of new videos in that series will be coming out in the next few weeks, actually. Just because the project's finished, the fun doesn't stop there. There'll be new stuff coming out as well on the channel. Some Arduino stuff for that, so the code that I use to create the robotic arm movement and stuff like that. During the course of the construction of that, Brendan was also working on another project as well. It was a Dalek, actually. A remote-controlled Dalek. Brendan, do you care to elaborate upon my crappy description of the Dalek?
Sure, Nick. So, me and Nick were in the same class because we're both doing Year 12, and we both had to do a project of some sort containing electrical and mechanical components, so to speak. So, Nick spoke a bit about his rover, and and me being a Whovian,
Whovian.
yeah, I decided to do something relative to Doctor Who and build an RC Dalek.
Okay.
So,
So what control method did you use for that? RC or nothing complex as Raspberry Pi?
No, nothing that complex. I used found an RC controller or transmitter, and it came with a receiver. So that was the main control portion. Then I bought a dual gearbox, put some wheels on it. I had to buy some ESCs so that the motors don't turn unless you put a pulse through it.
Yep.
And then connected them all up. Now that was majority electronics done.
Yeah.
And then 3D printed the head and the midsection.
Yep.
And there will be a video uploaded, I would think.
Yeah.
Is that
I've
correct?
put
Yep.
together a bit of a test demo reel for that'll be showing throughout this podcast as well. As long as I may upload a separate video just on the Dalek itself. Recently, I've been 3D printing as well. As Brendan said, he made a couple of 3D printed parts for his Dalek, I guess. Yeah, Dalek. We're going to call it a Dalek. Well, it is a Dalek. So there'll be video of that showing throughout this podcast as well. Would you care to elaborate a bit more about the 3D printing process? Yeah.
What we generally use SketchUp. That was the easiest way. There are probably other programs out there, but we found SketchUp the easiest. So you make your model, or find a model from somewhere and alter it. That's what I originally had a full scale model. I had to resize it and cut it up into parts, and then depending on what printer you were using, because as we had a mini 3D up desktop printer,
we had four.
And then we also had the Axon. The BFB Axon 3000.
Yeah.
Which was the one.
So those printers can be found. I did a video on those in the episode of Hobby Electronics, 3D printing and laser cutting. So we're also fortunate to have access to a laser cutter. Actually, it's rather large. A rather large laser cutter, actually. You may continue.
Yeah.
Sorry about the interruption.
That's alright. So, I was planning on using the Axon one, which you use Axon 2 as the program.
Yep.
And you have to let the file build in that program before you upload it to the printer via USB. But I had issues with that. The printer didn't like my files. So I ended up printing the head and the midsection on the smaller printers, and they turned out reasonably well. Then the base section, it just completely screwed up. So I ended up making that out of wood. So
Okay.
it turned out all right in the end.
She made the best of the bad opportunity. Turns out,
Yeah.
So, as you've probably seen in that 3D printing episode, I put together a a couple of objects out of my collection. Took a couple of objects out of that collection to show you guys. So I've got a couple of those here. Okay, so here are a couple of those objects that I was talking about before. I have a Raspberry Pi case. The Raspberry Pi fits fairly snugly in there. But I wasn't quite too happy. I printed this out in a bit of a rush, so I set the layer thickness to 0.25, and the big BFB printer can operate at, out of focus there, at zero point 0.1 millimeter thickness. I think that's 0.1 micron. Yeah, so that turned out rather well, but I was still a little bit disappointed with the result of that. So I was trying to put some that go on there, back on there properly. I was going to use the acetone method to get smooth finishes on the print. I'll just show. Well, there's another object you probably would have seen throughout that video as well, the Yoda bust. I downloaded this model from Thingiverse and printed that out. That was at 0.1 millimeter thickness, layer thickness. I think that took probably 8 or so hours to print out actually. That was on the smaller UP 3D printers. Okay, so there were a few of the objects that I've been printing out. I've also been working on a Darth Vader lightsaber hilt. That's turned out pretty well. There's one of the files though that I downloaded from Thingiverse that's a bit dodgy and the printer doesn't really like it, so I may have to remodel that in SketchUp as well. Brendan also has printed out a rather large object as well.
Yes. To test the versatility of the printers, I decided, for those of you who haven't heard of Thundercats, it's a TV show from the 1980s. They did a remake in 2011, and I printed out the Sword of Omens into parts. Then all I have to do is put it together and paint it. So yeah, all the parts turned out pretty well.
And this thing, just to put in perspective, is fairly big. Probably how many meters long? Probably 1.5.
Yeah, about 1.5, 1.2 meters.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's really lightweight though. Made of ABS, I believe the material was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also this month on the Hobby Electronics channel, I put out a video on a Arduino breadboard, using the ATmega 382 IC. I think that's it. Yeah, if I remember correctly. That was the IC you can pick up from JCar or from the Freetronics website. I've been wanting to do that for a while now. Make a small breadboard Arduino, or you could even solder that onto a piece of Vero board, prototyping board. Instead of having to purchase a full Arduino, which upwards of $30, $29. I think that's how much I purchased it from JCar. $29 probably, around that. And yeah, well, if you're embedding one of those in every one of your projects, if you're a fan of Arduino, you may have one of these in a couple of your projects, and that project mightn't get used for a while, so it might be a bit of a waste of Arduino. And so I've decided to get a couple of these ICs and make up a couple of the Arduino, I guess, clones, Arduino clones on a piece of breadboard, and then I can embed those in my projects. I found that has been, well, really helpful actually, saving me from having to have 4 or so Arduinos sitting around in my parts bin, getting unused all of the time. So just with a handful of components, I think it cost me less than $15 actually to construct. That's a lot cheaper than the $29 upwards that you can purchase Arduinos for. Yeah. Brennan, do you know much about Arduino?
Not particularly. I've had a little look into them, but like they're pretty versatile as to what they can do.
Yeah.
So
We're thinking about making a racing, or turn RC car into a Wi-Fi car with a Arduino shield and
webcams.
Webcam, stuff like that, raced around. Be pretty cool. Piggyback on the school's Wi-Fi network.
We didn't end up doing that though.
No, we don't have time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We've got plenty of time now, though.
Yeah.
So that pretty much wraps up this episode of the podcast. Thanks for watching. Rate, comment, like, subscribe. Post in the description what you want us to talk about next time in the comments. Sorry. Thanks for joining us. I've been Nick.
I've been Ham.
See you next time.
See ya. Thanks for watching.